Awesome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I think everyone is calling from different places, whether it's home or in the office. So I really appreciate everybody making the time to check in and to take advantage of this presentation. Stress is something that we all experience, but we don't necessarily want to look at it, and we all experience stress in so many different ways. I am a registered psychotherapist, and I do a lot of these presentations in different environments, sometimes in schools, sometimes in small businesses, organizations, and it really doesn't matter where I do it because we all can relate to stress in some way. The overall theme of this particular presentation for today is to not just name stress, but actually have a better understanding of it so that we can overcome it and manage it and essentially live a life that brings peace and joy and all of the things that we're striving for. So again, I just want to thank you for your time, and I hope that it's such a challenge to do these virtual workshops sometimes, because especially in workplaces, when I'm doing my own classes, I make everybody have their camera on so I can see and there's like an engagement, but I totally understand the workspace everybody's in, and it's kind of nice to just do work in your pajamas. So I get it, it's cool, but it is funny because I just feel like I'm talking to myself most of the time. But I do want to invite you, if you have questions, feel free to drop it in the chat box and I'll have a gander and make sure I can cover some stuff. And this is also one of 4 presentations, so every Thursday at noon. So if there are questions or areas that you want to maybe have covered during this time, anything related to health and wellness or different tools and strategies that you can use to support yourself, your family, your work, please drop it in the chat box, or you also have access to my personal email and contact information through the invite. So, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, so go presentation style here. Obviously covered who I am, and normally I would get people to kind of share who you are, but if you'd like to, you can share some things in the chat box, but I'm kind of feeling like it's more let's just take in the information and go with it. So I'll just move on. We're going to cover what is stress, the impact of stress, and then conquering stress. And yeah, and the biggest piece here is what stresses me out might not be what stresses you out, and that's totally okay. For example, for some people work is stressful, whereas for other people work is an outlet and it's something that helps them with stress. So we're all different, and it's really about our perception, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more. Okay, so stress, there are a couple of things that we need to cover, and that's what produces a state of stress, what are the benefits of stress, and what are the potential problems of being in a state of stress. So the definition of stress, and if you're making notes, I definitely recommend writing this down. It's the inability to decide to change. The inability to decide to change. So it's an interesting concept to think about, because when we think of stress, we might think, oh, it's work, it's money, it's the kids, it's relationships, it's our health, it's all these things. But it's actually really digging deep to the root is the inability to decide to change. And we'll go into why this is important as well, because it's coming from a perspective of being empowered and recognizing that you can make choices and explore options and be in a place of control even when you're in a situation that's seemingly out of your control. So the inability to decide to change. Now, what you perceive as stress can be different, so if you can think about on your own right now, if you were to make a list, and you can actually make a list if you like and write some things down, what would you consider the things that stress you out? Some common things might be health-related issues, money, bills, mortgage, car issues. Kids can be stressful as much as they can be loving, and things, the most important people in our life can be those who we love and care about, but they can also be the people that are stressing us out. And that can include our partners, relationship, parents, family, friends. Time can be a big thing that stresses people out, or the lack of or too many things to do. Perhaps like deadlines can be stressful. And I know everybody's kind of in different roles and different situations. So these are just kind of common themes. I'm sure if you are writing your list or exploring a list in your mind, you can think of your own things that you would say, this stresses me out, this stresses me out, this stresses me out. I'm sure I didn't catch everything with my examples, but you know your life best, and you would be the one that would know your stress best as well. But what you perceive as stress does matter. What you perceive as stress matters. So there's something called the stress response, which most people I think have heard about in some way or another. It is the fight or flight. So in the past, as ancient humans, we needed to have the fight or flight in order to survive, in order to save our life. So an example would be, you know, in ancient humans living out in the wilderness, and there's a lion, tiger, or bear, and we have to either fight for our life or we need to run for our life. And that is the stress response. Now, the problem here is that the stress response now is being activated when the boss comes into the office, when the bills come in the mail, when your partner comes home from work, when the kids get in trouble at school and you get a phone call, or when right now it's when the kids have a stuffy nose and you're like, oh my God, do I send them to school or not? You know, so there's lots of different things that come in to activate our stress response. But these things are not the tiger that's going to eat us, but our brain and our body is responding in that way. And so stress is an instinct. It is something that is an instinctive reaction, and it is a set of physiological responses that we perceive to something that we think is a threat, that we perceive a perceived threat. So I had mentioned a list of examples like time and money, health issues, all of these things, and these are all things that can be perceived as a threat, but not to everybody. You know, so for some people, their relationship could be their place that is filling them up, is bringing them peace, is bringing them joy. But for other people, the relationship could be the thing that's stressing them out the most. They're just not getting along, there's fighting or whatever is going on. Just like I said earlier with the example of work, sometimes work can be the outlet and sometimes work can be the stressor. So it's what we perceive, what we in our life look at that we perceive, this is stressing me out. And the thing is that it's not just about it's stressing me out, it's the fact that we are responding to it like it's a life or death situation. And not all of the things we perceive as stressful are life and death situations. And so for, you know, ancient times, people needed to run for their lives or fight for their life. And right now we're talking about fight or flight. But if you explore psychology or wellness in any way, you might have heard of freeze as another thing, or faint. But these are still things that can be considered as part of the flight. And what I mean by that is flight isn't just run away. Flight can be disengaged. Have you ever experienced someone who's there but not there? You know, it's kind of a lot going on right now. Like people are just kind of in this zombie state where they're kind of checked out. And to be quite honest, you might be checked out right now listening to this presentation. You could just be kind of, you know, lost in your own wherever, who knows where we go. So that checking out is another version of flight. Here, but not here. So right now I'm doing a kids program called The Alternative, and it's with a small group of kids, and it amazes me how zoned out they are. And it's kind of a joke in the group, like when I ask a question, they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, I was zoned out. Like they know to name it now. But right now, especially with what's going on in the world, people are checking out. And they're checking out not just with zoning out, but they're checking out with different substances. You know, drinking, alcohol, drugs, substance abuse, but also checking out with just like mindless activities of, you know, just binge watching shows and not really thinking about life at all. Not to say there's anything good or bad or right or wrong about these things. It's just a matter of another way to flight, to flee our stress. And so we're going to talk more about why these things are go-to practices and why they're, they're seemingly helpful, because they do help in some way. They help deal with the stress that people are significantly facing. Now the problem is the brain doesn't know the difference between the tiger that's threatening you or the boss that walks into the office. The brain doesn't know the difference between the lion that's going to eat your face off or the bill that comes in the mail that's stressing you out. So it doesn't matter what it is that you perceive as stress. It's the fact that the brain is getting information that this is stressful, this is a threat, and it will respond accordingly. So you need to really sit with yourself and ask, does my current situation threaten my life? And, for some situations, yeah, the answer is yes. If you received, you went to the doctor and you received information of like a serious illness, yeah, that is a life that's threatening your life. But is, I don't know, like your kid not listening to you threatening your life? Not necessarily. Might be threatening their life depending on what level of stress you're at, but it's not threatening your life. However, our brain doesn't know the difference, and it is responding as if it is threatening your life. And so the stress response can and will threaten your life in time, because to be in that state of stress it will impact your mental, emotional, physical health. And one of the things that's really important, I find fascinating about this, is when that stress response does occur, it takes 6 hours before you can balance out again. 6 hours. So what I mean by that is, let's say you wake up late and you're late for your first meeting and you're stressed trying to get your stuff together, trying to get your paperwork, blah, 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 you're stressed. And then at the meeting, you get news about how your job is changing. And then all of a sudden the stress kicks in again. And then after the meeting, you call somebody that you know and you hear maybe somebody's passed away or someone's ill. Boom, another form of stress. And then you're working, you're trying to get through your workload and you don't get through it and you're just stressed by the end of the day because you never got through the to-do list. Then you're sitting around the table with your family and the kids share something that happened at school about, their grades or whatever, and then there's another form of stress. So if you can think about all these little things throughout the day that might have triggered your stress, and it takes 6 hours for just one of those to balance out, a lot of times we never get a break from stress, meaning we don't get a break from the stress response. And so what happens with the stress response is, I'm just going to see here if I have it on a piece. Yeah, okay, so I'll just go tell you. So with the stress response, what happens is we go into the state to be able to fight or flight. So fight is easy to catch. It's big, it's loud, it's, that's the typical yelling, screaming, throwing something, fist through the wall, all of these, I'm talking kind of extremely, but, I think we can all understand that form of stress of fight. Now, flight can look like leaving a relationship, leaving the room when you're in a fight, slamming the door behind you because you don't like what's being heard. Flight can look like what I said before, where you just check out. We're not even listening anymore to what's being said. Flight can look like, relying on some sort of substance or habit that allows you to just kind of check out. So these forms of the stress response help us seemingly in addressing this stressful threat, so to speak, or incident or moment, but the long-term effect it has will affect our life because it's affecting our mind, emotions, and our physical body. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that. So you can actually take a moment if you want to really dive in and make a list of what stresses you out, which you've already been working on. If you already started that list, that's great. But then to explore this question, how do you feel during that stressful situation? And then how do you feel after the stress is gone? And what is the benefit you gain from stress in these areas? And what problems does stress create for you? So an example could be when you feel stressed in the situation, maybe you have a stomach ache, or you feel tension in the body. And then maybe when it's done, you can feel the tension release. Or maybe you don't feel like the knots in the stomach, or headaches even are huge too. What's the benefit you gain from stress in these areas? You know, only you can answer that question. You know, sometimes people who are stressed at work, that pressure might be the thing that produces more efficiency in their work. You know, some people, they need that pressure in order to get things done. So like, for example, you might have 3 weeks to complete a project, but it's not until like 3 days before it's due where you actually dive in and get it done. I don't know if anybody's guilty of this, or, you know, maybe you're like, okay, it's the weekend, I'm gonna clean the house this weekend. And then it's like Sunday at 3, 4 o'clock, and you're like, okay, I said I was gonna clean the house, like I really should clean the house. So sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves, and like that lights the fire under us to get something done. So that could be potential benefit to stress, but there could be other benefits that you can explore within yourself about, you know, sometimes when we are stressed about money, it might open the door to creatively problem solve other ways to have an income. Sometimes when we're stressed about our kids and what they're dealing with, it might benefit us by you know, improving something within their lives. You know, so for example, I think everyone can relate with COVID. It's a stressful situation that we're all in. It's this collective stress, but perhaps the benefit is it's making people aware of their health. Hopefully it's making people aware of their immunity system and what things they could do to benefit or improve their immunity. Or maybe it's forcing people to exercise more or take vitamin D or vitamin C. With the whole shutdown situation, it forced people to be home and it totally destroyed people's lifestyles, but maybe there was some benefits in there. Maybe people were actually eating dinner together. Maybe people didn't have to have that go, 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 gotta be here, gotta do this, like that could just kind of settle down, you know. So there's some benefits to different experiences and stress, and if we can kind of see those benefits, it might help us understand certain situations. But we also need to look at what problems does that stress create for you? You know, because there's two sides to every coin, right? So like, you know, for example, with COVID, yeah, it created the shutdown and there might be benefits to that, but it could have created problems. You know, not being able to go to work. Some people are laid off. Some people are unable to do what they normally do for work. Some people are getting more work to do because of, you know, the changes. So it's just different for different scenarios, and only you can make this list. Only you can answer these questions. I'm just kind of throwing out some examples. And if you really want to take the most out of this workshop, take time to do some of these exercises, and you can either write these questions down, answer them as I'm talking, or think about them in your mind. Okay, so we do have 5 danger signs of too much stress. One of those danger signs is physical. So there is an increase in physical problems and illness. So I'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, but you know, some things can be tension in the body, like I mentioned, headaches, lack of sleep, or sleeping too much, not being able to sleep at night, you know, different aches and pains in the body. Stress can actually lead to ulcers, strokes, these sorts of things. And like I said, I'll mention it later. But it's important to actually realize that when you're dealing with a physical problem or illness, for example, it's a good example. Let's say you have back problems or neck issues. You know, you look at the back problem or neck issue, and maybe you're going to deal with it on a physical level, like go to a massage or maybe chiropractor or physio. and you deal with it from that physical space. But then there's like a deeper place that you can go to, like what's the root cause? And a lot of times stress is a root cause to our physical issues. And if we don't change the root, we're going to keep having to deal with the physical problem. So if you address the stress that's creating the tension, you might actually help with healing the tension. I'm just going to plant that seed there as something to consider when you're dealing with physical issues. Another area and sign of 5 dangers of stress is within the relationships, and that there's an increased problems within relationships. We see this all the time, right? In families and in homes, when the family's under stress, there's likely more fighting, likely more miscommunication, misunderstandings, disconnect at times, you know. So if we're seeing an increase in that, it could be a potential sign of too much stress. Thoughts, an increase of negative thoughts and feelings. And this is huge, especially right now, because we have our own thoughts, but at the same time, we're very influenced by everything we're exposed to right now. You know, so watching the news or being on social media, talking to certain friends and family, you know, it can be really overwhelming and bombarding with so many different opinions and perspectives. And I'm not here to tell you what's right and wrong. That's here for you to have the discernment. But what I will say is, how is it affecting your thoughts? Do you find that you're having an increase of negative thoughts and feelings? And that can be a sign of too much stress. And then, of course, habits, a significant increase in bad habits or addictive behavior. Go-to things, smoking, drinking, different drugs, substance abuse. Habits can also be like eating habits. Are your eating habits serving you or not? Are you finding that you are falling into habits that are helping you, or you are falling into habits that might not be helping you so much, or might be harming other areas of your life? So it might help the stress in one way, but it might be causing an issue in another. So for example, drinking might help kind of give the edge off the stress for you, but then if you're drunk and, you know, creating fights within your relationship, it might create a problem with your relationship. So these are just some things to kind of, you know, think about. And then of course your energy level and being in a state of exhaustion can be a sign of too much stress. So there are common stressors that everybody experiences, and it can be a loss. So a loss could be of a parent, a child, a job. For many of us with COVID, it was a loss of a lifestyle. You know, whatever lifestyle you had, let's say, you know, January, February, March, is likely not necessarily the lifestyle you're having now. And so that can be a form of a loss and a change. So of course, change of job, home, cycle of life, but we've gone through so many changes as a collective. So a lot of these things that are common stressors are going to be common stressors across the board, considering COVID-19, lockdowns and quarantine and changes in work and lifestyle. Then of course, health challenges is one, and again, this falls right in alignment with what's going on. Whether or not you have experienced COVID firsthand, there is concerns around health with COVID. Financial challenges is definitely a common stressor on during a regular year. In this year, it's definitely one for some people with having to deal with different changes in their jobs. Legal challenges is a stressor, a common stressor. Education, unrealistic or unmet expectation. This one is an interesting one because it's often missed. You know, a lot of people can say, oh yeah, finances, a lot of people could name some of these, but unrealistic or unmet expectation is huge. You know, if we had an expectation in March that we were just going to be locked down for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden we're still in, you know, November dealing with all of this, like that was an unrealistic expectation that can create a lot of stress. You know, so there's lots of different versions of this, even within relationships. If you have an expectation of how your relationship should look and it's not showing up like that, it can create a lot of stress. If you have an expectation of your kids and that they should be doing well in school and they're not, that can create some stress. And then of course, unmet agendas is, you know, a classic is your to-do list, things that you want to do in life, your goals, your vision, and if that's not being hit, that can create stress. And then classic is fear. And fear can dress up in so many different ways, you know, fear of the unknown, fear with all the uncertainty, fear of getting sick, fear of someone else getting sick. All of these things are a part of our reality right now. But we can have, you know, fear on a regular thing, you know, fear of losing your job, fear of losing your house, fear of not making all your ends meet, fear of trying something new, you know, all kinds of stuff that we can dive into and relate to. And, you know, to be quite honest, I'm just going to do a little bit of a check-in here. This presentation isn't easy to listen to and isn't easy to dive into because it means you have to look at stuff. It means you actually have to be radically honest with yourself and where you're at. And, you know, are you dealing with more stress than you even realize? You know, and if you can actually be radically honest with yourself about that, then that is the first step to actually dealing with it. But I think so many people just want to shut it off or shut off the world or just shut off the feelings that they're not actually dealing with the root cause of stress or dealing with having to manage it or reduce it in some way. So these are the common stressors, and you can write them down and rank them as, you know, like the number of stress level that it is for you. So if you were to rank them between 1 and 10, maybe for you, legal challenges might be at a 1. You know, you're not really dealing with any legal challenges, but, you know, maybe you're dealing with some health issues, so health issues might be at a 10. So only you would know this area and only you could do the ranking. But what you would do is you would rank it based on what it actually is, and then you would consider where would you want your ranking to actually be. So like if health challenges was at a 10, you know, maybe you wanted to get it to a 3. So then it's a matter of asking yourself, well, what would need to happen in order for that to change? So if health is a major concern right now, maybe I went to the doctor's telling me I'm having heart issues, I have high cholesterol, you know, health is at like a 9, 10 right now. Well, if I'm going to address it, how would I get it down to a 3 or a 4? I would actually probably maybe need to change what I'm eating or change some, you know, habits that I've gotten into, maybe implement some sort of, you know, stretching every morning or whatever. Like, so you can look at this and be like, okay, this is where my stress is at in this area, and this is what's going to need to happen in order for it to be reduced. Now, I just want to throw in a little something here, because if you want to look at things and also look at what are you in control of. So meaning maybe we lost our lifestyle that we had back in February. Maybe our lifestyle was we're always hanging out with people and, you know, doing family events and birthdays and all of these things, and we're missing that. And now we can't do that because there's restrictions and blah, 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 blah. Well, can you change the restrictions? No. But what can you do? Maybe you're missing that connection. So how can you create that connection within the circumstances that we're in? You know, so this will require you to be reflective and a little bit creative on how you can address the stress. And we're going to get into it a little bit more as well. So if you haven't already, I recommend writing these down and then ranking them from 1 to 10, and then consciously deciding what you would like your ranking to be. And then, of course, reflecting with yourself what would need to happen in order for that to change. All right. So there is a physical side to stress, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, but it goes a little bit deeper, and it is a little bit, you know, challenging to consider. But there is, the reality of stress is that we need to be honest with ourselves about how it's impacting our physical, mentally and emotional states. But right now I'm going to talk about physical. So we have a physical reaction to stress, and that is to fight or flight. So this is a biological response in which your body is ready to fight the danger or run from it. So this stress response, you know, triggers the brain to release stress hormones, and these hormones run through the body in a way that puts the body in motion to deal with whatever it is. So it's like an alarm system for your body to fight or flight. And like I said earlier, it will take 6 hours for these hormones to circulate through your body from the initial stressor. And if you're constantly being stressed throughout the day, that means these hormones are circulating through the body constantly, and we're not actually getting a break from it. So asking the question, is your stress life-threatening, is really important to have the discernment with. So let's look into this, the stress results. So in order to fight or flight, our heart rate increases. Its original purpose is so that the blood will pump faster. And the long-term effects that this can create is high blood pressure. In order to fight or flight, we would need to have our breathing rate increase. And the original purpose for this is to provide more oxygen. Now, the long-term effects is chest pain, tired diaphragm muscles, or strain in the chest. In order to fight or flight, digestion will stop. So that means the organs will stop running at its fullest capacity. And the original purpose for this was to divert blood to larger muscles in order to run or in order to fight. The long-term effect of this is ulcers. Another reaction is blood leaves the head, hands, and feet. And this is, again, to divert blood to larger muscles. And the long-term effect of this is cold hands and feet, migraines, or tension headaches. We have different factors in the blood, and this minimizes blood loss to support if there's an injury. And this long-term effect can increase in blood clotting disorders or in stroke. Sugar and insulin is affected, and it's released into the bloodstream. This is to provide more ability to run or fight. And this long-term effect can be low blood sugar levels, which essentially can make you feel tired. Stress messages are sent to your muscles, and the original purpose of this is to prepare muscles to run or fight, again, to go into action. But if you're constantly in that state of stress and the muscles are constantly in that preparation, it can actually result with fatigue. Another reaction is adrenaline is released. This is to produce that superhuman strength. So a classic example is when people talk about the mom who lifts a car to save the child's life. But the actual long-term effects of this is surges of anger. So I don't know if you've ever seen somebody explode at Tim Hortons or Starbucks because they got cream instead of milk, or they got a tea instead of a coffee. Maybe you were one of those people. Maybe you're with somebody that was like that. But is it really about the coffee? It's not, is it? Stuff stacks up and then we explode. It's kind of like if you're stressed all day at work and then your kid asks a question at home and you just snap. Is it really about the question the kid asked, or is it the fact that it's just been built up and then all of a sudden we have these surges of anger? So what ends up happening is we react and behave in ways that we later think, why did I do that? Why did I say that? And essentially what's happening is we're in the stress response, so we can't even access the part of our brain that can help us regulate our emotions or problem solve. So we are in these situations where we need to problem solve, but we're stressed and can't access the part of the brain that helps us problem solve. So you could start to see how this stuff builds up and why it becomes such an important issue to address when we're talking about stress. To continue, our lymph glands activate, cortisol is released, and this can activate the immune system. But if we're doing this constantly, it can result with autoimmune disorder. Senses can become more acute. So this is to be able to perceive threat, to be able to move and avoid in a situation if needed. But of course, the long-term effects is eye strain, oversensitivity to sound, touch, and just that level of oversensitivity in general. So just a quick question. Do you know anyone that experiences these types of physical problems? Ulcers, strokes, heart issues, headaches, fatigue, chest problems. sugar issues, diabetes later in life, you know, all these different things, you know, we look at this stuff and we say, oh, you know what, it is this physical issue, but is it the physical issue, or is it the fact that we've been building this stress all this time? And it's something to really consider. And the reason I talk about all of this, and it kind of puts the pressure on to think like, holy shit, like I'm in the stress response all the time, like this is going to lead to problems. It's good if you're feeling that way, because you're going to look at the solutions from a different perspective now. Because I think that's why we're here, right? We want the solutions. I talked about the physical issues, but I didn't even get into the mental, emotional, spiritual side of how this makes an impact on us. And the question is, are you ready to conquer this? If I came in here in this conversation, you know, I teach meditation, I teach yoga, mindfulness-based practices, and I was like, okay, everybody, let's go engineers, we're going to talk about meditation today. It would be like, are you for real? Like, what did Connor create? Like, why did he even like organize this, right? But when you start to see the whole picture and be radically honest with yourself and the reality, and you might be doing pretty well with managing your stress, but as a collective, we're dealing with a lot of stress, you know, a lot of stress. So if we can actually learn to manage this and conquer this, it's not going to help, not just help ourselves, it will help each other in the workplace. It will help your families, your friends. It will help your whole, whoever you live with, whether it's housemates or it's family members. It can be make a huge difference on every area of your life to be able to look at this and make a change. So this is a technique that can be used. It's one of the first techniques we'll talk about, and it's working with the breath. And like I said, could you imagine if I'm like, okay, we're going to work on dealing with stress, and everybody's going to inhale and exhale, and this is how we're going to take care of your stress. You would be like, this is ridiculous. But I want to paint the picture for you. When something comes in that you perceive as stressful, you have 10 seconds before the brain activates the stress response. Okay, so it could be the lion, tiger, bear, boss, kids, whatever it is. Something's coming in that you perceive as stressful. You have 10 seconds in that time. What can you do? One of the quickest, most effective tools we have is our breath. So in this case, one of the examples we share is inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. But when you inhale for a count of 5, hold your breath for a count of 5, then exhale for a count of 5. And this practice of slowing down the breath, becoming aware of how you're breathing, can be the very thing that interrupts in that 10 seconds and interrupts the stress response from firing through the body. Okay, so it's very, very simple to activate your breathing. Of course, we're always breathing, but when we become conscious of our breath and we use our breath, it's really important. So even just inhaling nice and deep through your nose, using your fullest breath capacity, and then exhaling through your mouth all the way until there's nothing left to exhale can be extremely helpful. So this will interrupt within that 10-second frame with your breath, and that will interrupt the fact that the stress response lasts for 6 hours. Okay, so the truth is, we do miss that 10 seconds. Okay, I got somebody who needs to mute here. I can hear some muffling. I think it's Brian, actually, ironically. Okay, so in that 10 seconds, there's breathing, but you can also think of other things, like how you talk to yourself. Your self-talk can be huge, but really paying attention to your breath is one of the #1 techniques we explore, simply because it is the quickest thing that we can use that doesn't require any money, doesn't require anything in your hands, no tools. It's with you wherever you go, and it's something that you can use quickly, easily, and it can have just an extreme effect on interrupting the stress response. The next one is endorphin release. So anything that releases endorphins will resolve stress in the body. So a lot of people are familiar with, some form of physical exercise. A lot of people, when they're like, oh, when I go for a run or when I go to the gym, I feel so much better. It's my stress relief. And it's great to be able to have those types of tools and strategies. the one thing I want to kind of plant the seed on is developing a toolbox of strategies. So for example, if you're a runner, great, you use that as a way to de-stress, but then tell me what happens when you hurt your ankle, or you had to get a knee surgery and you need some recovery time. If that is your only tool or strategy, you're going to be screwed. So you want to be able to build your toolbox and be able to utilize different tools at different times. You know, you're at work and you're stressed, you can't go for a run. You know, so what can you do at work? So we want to be able to have different tools and different ways to do the endorphin release. Surprisingly, people don't realize this, but prayer and meditation is an endorphin release. So if you have at all tried meditation, maybe you think, oh, meditation isn't for me, that's okay. I get that all the time. A lot of my clients, oh, I can't meditate. I try to meditate and my mind is so busy. I just think of all these things and like, you know, just meditation is not for me. But the thing is that is part of meditation. To sit and be still and your mind be just rambling on, it is the subconscious releasing. It is you releasing so that you can get to that place everybody talks to of stillness, calmness, peace. But you have to release first. That is part of the meditation process. So let's say you're like, you know, I think we've been all exposed to the benefits of meditation. You know, I teach meditation all the time, and you can go on Google and there's just heaps of benefits, physical, mental, emotional, physical, like or spiritual, all of the things. Most studies that focus on meditation and resulting those benefits is about a 20-minute practice. Okay, so let's say you've never meditated before, 20 minutes is going to seem like a long time. You know, then start with 2 or 3. But whatever time you start with, let's say you start with 10, 7 of those minutes might be, and only 3 of those minutes might be quiet. Because you're going through a process of endorphin release. Then as you develop the practice, you develop the muscle, maybe 5 of the 10 is busy mind, and then 5 minutes is quiet. Then maybe you get to 2 minutes of busy mind, and then 8 minutes of quiet. And then maybe it's 1 minute, and then 9 minutes. And then the next day, all of a sudden, you're at 8 minutes of a busy mind and 2 minutes of quiet. So it's like, it's not linear. And it's really important to see that meditation, if you struggle with it, it's actually an endorphin release, which a lot of people don't realize. Classical music, also an endorphin release. Sexual orgasm, an endorphin release. Engaging in any creativity that you truly enjoy, endorphin release. So if you enjoy creating new recipes or painting or drawing or, you know, renovating your house, whatever that level of creativity, it doesn't matter what it is, something that you truly enjoy is all that matters, it's an endorphin release. Moving on here, another technique is relaxation. So I talked about meditation already. I've talked about breathing. Now breathing, inhaling, hold, exhaling, hold. So if 5 is too long, 5 seconds is too long, that's cool. Start with 3. Inhale for 3 seconds, hold for 3, exhale for 3, hold it out for 3. And if that's too easy, then increase the time and then build that muscle. Relaxing your areas of the body, you know, so a lot of times people will find this in yoga. After yoga, they feel so relaxed. But, you know, moving meditation, yoga is considered one of the moving meditations, but there's also Qigong, Tai Chi, Qigong, these sorts of practices where you're actually moving with your breath that can be really helpful. But even sitting or laying down and tightening different areas of your muscles and then releasing them. Inhaling to the feet, tightening the feet, and then releasing that. And doing that all the way through the body. That's actually really great to do with kids too. If you have kids at home or grandkids that have anxiety or stress. And if you think kids aren't stressed, they're stressed. And the worst part right now is that there's nobody in their world that's not stressed. You know, the parents, the grandparents, the teachers, the principal, everybody in their world is stressed. So there's a lack of stability for kids right now. So if we can manage our stress, we can be huge at helping kids and youth do it as well. So addressing this and making this part of your life is really important, not just for yourself, but for your families and the people that you are connected to. So we've got relaxation. Then the next technique is control. So I kind of touched on this earlier about looking at what you can control. So reflecting to yourself, this is what I can control, this is what I can't control. You know, I can't control the restrictions that the government puts on, but I can control what I decide to focus on. I can control what I do in those restrictions. Okay, you know what? I can't leave the house. That's fine. I'm going to focus what I can control, and I can control everything that goes on in my house. So maybe I'm going to reorganize things. Maybe I'm going to get rid of stuff or clean something or paint a wall, whatever it is, right? So looking at what you can control, but also making a list of what you can't, because if you know what you can't control, then you're not going to waste time and energy on that. You know, so like in the workplace, there are some things, decisions that are made that maybe you have no control over. And that can be frustrating at times, of course. But at the same time, if you're only focused on the stuff that you can't control, oh, you know, I don't know anybody's name. I'm just going to make up, oh, Roy made this decision on our behalf in the workplace and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other thing. And you just focus on that, you're good, and you have no control over it, you will be frustrated and you will be more stressed. But if you can just shift your perspective and what you're looking at and start focusing on what you can control, you put yourself more in an empowering situation. And when you feel like you control something, you will be able to start to manage it, manage your stress. But this concept, perception, illusion that we have no choice is something that can create a lot of stress. But we have free will and we always have choice. You know, I can go into this in many different ways, and if you feel like stuff's coming up and you want to have an individual conversation about some of this stuff, please reach out, because I'm really just scraping the surface of a lot of stuff, but we can go deep into how do we actually address this stuff and how do we actually make these changes. And you know, it's one thing to say, oh, you know, I can't focus on this thing, but how do I even begin to not focus on that and focus on this? It's a bit of practice. Have some compassion for yourself, you know, have some patience with yourself, because shifting the way you think and the way you look at stuff is like a muscle that you have to develop. So you don't just go to the gym once to develop strong arms or legs. You go consistently in order to develop that shift. And the same goes with the mind and how you're using your mind and focus. It takes time and it takes consistent practices to make that shift. So this is a really powerful technique, but if you need some more support on it, please let me know, because it can be extremely empowering to be able to focus on the things you can control and to let go of your attachment to the things you can't. All right, love and acceptance, technique number 5. So you can look at all the areas of your life. In this case, there's a list here. Family, which can include your mate, your children, your extended family. Home, is there too much to do? Is it disorganized? Your finances, the mortgage, credit cards, bills, your work or school. So maybe you are taking classes or courses, or maybe your workload is high or low or whatever it is. Then of course I mentioned extended family already, but extended family can go into, you know, elderly parents. If you have any elders in your life right now, that can be quite stressful for people. One, that they're already dealing with health issues and if you're one of the caregivers, but two, right now we know that they are a population that is highly at risk, and so that can be stressful in itself. Friends is another area, so whether you're not able to see them or you don't have enough of them, you don't have time for them. Society is a huge one right now, because we have a lot of society decisions that are being made that are affecting all of us. So, you know, yeah, taxes, laws, and rules, but the rules are really impacting us and how we live our life. So that can be of a high stress right now. And then church or other membership organizations that you might be involved in. So you look at each of these areas and you analyze the amount of stress you have in each area. Okay, so you look at that. If you're writing, making notes, you might want to list all of these things. And then what you're going to do is look at the bottom line when it comes to each area. So what really matters in this area of my life? What are my priorities? What is the cause of the stress here? Is it real? Is it just in my mind? Do I have control in this area? So let's look at something like the home. Okay, I think we all have a home to live in, or at least one that we are, you know, part of. So if your home environment is really stressful right now, what really matters in this area of your life? You know, if you live with your family, it's easy to be like, yeah, my family matters. But if your family is the one that's stressing you out, where are your priorities in that? You know, are you forgetting the fact that the people you're blowing up on are actually the people you care about most? And no judgment, honestly, no judgment. It's a result of too much stress. But what is causing the stress there? And is it real? Is it just in your mind? And do you have control in this area? So when you get to the bottom line, you can ask yourself, do I even need to be stressed about this? So many times when we analyze and we use this technique, we can realize that there's a lot of areas of our life that are causing stress, but perhaps we're overreacting to them. You know, so one that we can all kind of, one that we can all connect to is society. So we have the government that is telling us there's these certain restrictions. You need to wear a mask to go into a store. In some areas that I am teaching in, people, you know, they're at a different level of lockdown. So like, you know, places are closed again and things like this. And of course, everybody here has had that experience back in March, April, May, whatever it was. So these rules are set in place. It can create a lot of stress. But when you look at what are my priorities, what is the cause of the stress here? Is it real? Is it just in my mind? And do you need to have stress in this area? Do you have what part of this do you have control of? You could start to get to the bottom line and chisel through some of this. So again, there's this can go deeper, but it's another tool that you can use is actually coming to a place of accepting a situation and returning back to a place of compassion. Okay, affirmations is huge. I talked earlier about that 10 seconds between the threat and your brain releasing the endorphins. What you tell yourself, your self-talk is so important. And so you can create affirmations that you utilize all day long, or maybe just in the morning. There's something called incantations where you use words with movement. So you might say, you know, if you want to focus on health and wellness or losing weight or something, you might say, I'm strong, healthy, flexible, and powerful. And if you do that while you're dancing or jumping up and down, it creates an incantation. So you're working with the nervous system, you're working with the brain in an entirely different way, and it starts to embody this energy through affirmations. But what you tell yourself is important. If you really feel like you are, you know, let's look at something like the holiday season. You could easily say, oh, the holiday season is going to be the worst. You know, it's going to be the worst Christmas ever. We don't even know if we're going to be with our family. We don't even know if we're going to be able to do this. How am I going to do my Christmas shopping? Blah, 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 all of these things. And real things to be saying, by the way. But at the same time, how do you feel when you're saying those things to yourself? First of all, we don't know what's going to happen from a month to now. But we're using our imagination to create this worst case scenario in our mind, and it makes us feel hopeless, makes us feel sad, makes us feel frustrated or angry, and we generate all of this now while we're thinking or talking about something that's not even happening yet. So if we can shift into positive affirmations and start to say and speak or think things that are in alignment to what we want to create and in alignment to what we want to feel, it can be a really powerful tool for us to use to overcome and conquer stress. So again, I do whole workshops on just this type of stuff alone. So it's kind of a tease for me to just give you bits and pieces, but at the same time, it's good to have the whole range and be able to pick and choose. And if there's an area you want to explore more in, you can always reach out. And of course, we have 3 more weeks, so send messages and let me know different areas that you might be more interested in. The next technique is begin small. So when there's a lot of stuff stressing you out and it's overwhelming, start small. You know, if let's say you have a ton of health issues and you need to lose X amount of weight and you have heart issues and all of this stuff, start small. Drink more water. Instead of going to the gym 7 days a week, why don't you just start walking for 5 minutes if you've never done anything? I mean, start small. If you have a whole house to clean and you're just like, oh my God, it's overwhelming, what am I going to do? Start with one area and then move to the next area, move to the next area. You know, it's kind of like this conversation around how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. But when we see the whole picture, we're overwhelmed. It's hard to actually narrow it down to one thing. But the more you can practice that, the more you can feel like, okay, I got this. I got this. Okay, I'm just going to start with this. And then once you get that small thing done, you get into a momentum to get the next thing done. You get into momentum get the next thing done. You know, if you want to change the way you eat, people who just cold turkey change everything, it's not sustainable. What happens in a week or two, they fall back into old patterns. But when you choose little things at a time, and once you got that handle on that, you add in a new thing. Once you got a handle on that, you got in a new thing. And you can start small and get big gains. The next technique is rational problem solving. So when you're looking at a situation, a lot of times we want how do I problem solve this? How? But we want to start with is the 4 W's first. Who, what, where, why, then how. Because when you look at that and you look at all the resources and the information, it's like, what do I want? This is the situation, this is the who, this is the what, but what do I want? And what do I need in relation to the problem that's within my control? Maybe I need more of this, maybe I need less of that. Maybe I need more time, maybe I need less paperwork, maybe I need more, family time, maybe I need less work time, maybe I need more work time and less family time. So coming up with the answers to these questions can help you work through in a rational way to problem solve. Then, of course, one of my #1 powerful questions to ask is, what are my options? What are my options? Explore all the options before you make any decisions. And then when you think you got all the options, ask yourself, what options am I missing that I'm not seeing? And then, of course, creating an action plan for yourself and a goal, but then checking in with yourself and seeing how you're doing, and then to be able to adjust and evaluate. And of course, when you're doing anything that has to do with goals, reward yourself. If you've been drinking Coke and Pepsi and Mountain Dew and coffee, and that's all you drink, you never drink water, and you decide, okay, I'm going to change that. I'm going to start the day with water, and you do that every day for a week. Even if you do that one day, like, reward yourself. Acknowledge that you did something awesome. The last technique is intuitive creative problem solving. So quiet time, journaling, relaxation techniques, and meditation. And it's one little point in the whole presentation, but it's massive, is actively follow your joy. And I think a lot of people, as stressful a year as it has been, had an opportunity to kind of explore this. When there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to see, what do I do with my time? A lot of people started with new instruments, learning languages, doing things around the house that they've always wanted to do, doing different crafts, getting into some, fun creative recipes. It was a way to creative problem solve a huge situation that we were all dealing with. And a lot of people have experienced the joy of being able to do that. But we need to take those lessons and take them through our life, no matter whether we're in quarantine or not. That slower pace might have served a lot of us. And how do we utilize that in a way that continues these practices or habits or new creative projects? So this is the stress rescue. You have completed it. It's like a buffet. I like to think of it as a buffet of, okay, so not only what is stress, how do we deal with it, but what are all the techniques that we can utilize? So there's tons of techniques, tons. And I really encourage you to explore some of those techniques, not just be like, oh, I'm never going to do that, but actually try it on, see how it fits, bring it home, see how it works in your life. Maybe you think breathing, okay, how powerful can breathing be? Incredibly powerful. So when the threat comes in, utilize a breathing technique and interrupt that stress response so that you don't fall into reaction, which is what happens, right? We want to be able to respond instead of react to things that are going on in our life, especially the people that we love most. So yeah, this is the end of the presentation. I finished right on time, which is great. I do want to welcome you to drop some questions either in the chat box or you can send it in an email, and feel free to ask for specific areas that you might want to explore later. I really appreciate your time and your attention. Thank you for jumping in here. Let me know if you need anything in the meantime, and I will see you next Thursday at 12 o'clock. But yeah, if you have any questions now and you have time to have them answered, I'll answer them. But just so you know, that door is opened and you can send them here or send them by email at any time. All right. So thank you, everyone. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope it was a little bit triggering so that you can really take this seriously and make some changes that you know you can and you know that you need to do. And if you need help with that, that's what I'm here for. So don't think you're alone. It's really powerful to be covering this topic at a time where the stress is so high. But there is a way to get through this, and as a collective, we will get through it, as challenging as it has been. So thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Have a great week and weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. Hopefully you get a chance to get off the computer and reach out if you need anything. Thank you.